happens, we are there. In the meantime, the president is also expected to sign, he might have already, for all we know, an executive order calling for the extreme vetting of refugees, as well as focusing on those countries that, well, has a disproportionate number of incidents and terror going on. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is with the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Doctor, always good having you. What will this mean if he goes through? Does the executive order carry the weight where we can slow down here? What would it do?
Well, Neil, that's a great question, is what does it mean? I think we're hearing so much about what it doesn't mean, and a lot of exaggeration. The bottom line is that he's following through on promises during the campaign, rational approach, which is to stop and pause, not to ban Muslims. It's to pause immigration from countries that are havens for jihadists, which are ideologues that hate the West, that could threaten us. And we start vetting against the ideology of Islamism, the jihadism, if you will, from Somalia, Yemen, Libya, Syria, Iraq, etc. Now, the pause he called for was 120 days, and we might even need 180 days, but at that point, we begin to vet against the ideas of those who believe in a Sharia state, Islamic state. The only criticism I'd have is I don't understand why Syria was sort of indefinite, but the others were paused. The messaging is so important here, Neil. We need to message that it's not just stopping immigration, it's actually pausing it so that we can come back to security first, and second, getting back to America's roots, which are welcoming all those immigrants that want to be free.
You know, Zuhdi, as we wait, it could be any second, so I might interrupt you here for the swearing in of James Mattis, formerly by the President of the United States as Defense Secretary. He is on record as saying that we have to take the fight to ISIS. We cannot give any mixed signals. I'm paraphrasing here, but what do you make of what will be his approach to dealing with ISIS working with this president?
Well, absolutely. We not only have to take it there, we have to decimate them in Syria, Iraq, where they exist, their money, militarily. That's the end point of not violent extremism, but violent Islamism. But and also to decimate ISIS, you have to take away the inspiration, which is this Islamic State jihadist mentality. That is a global war, Neil. So we have to fight it not only over there, but globally. And we've been completely absent, or if anything, in the last 8 years, we've actually been catering to the Islamist mindset of fear, of anti-Westernism. So we need to engage Muslim reformers in the ideological war and let the mad dog Mattises of the world destroy them on the battlefield.
Now, I'm getting a sense from this new administration that this is going to be the premier concern, the primary concern. There's always back and forth about Russia, back and forth about, you know, how we deal with China, but front and center right now is how we take on ISIS. So he's probably, that is the president, going to want a plan for that, and an aggressive one. Where do you see this going?
Well, I hope we shift the axis of domestic and global approach to this from violent extremism to violent Islamism, where we say, you know what, the Islamist groups, be it the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Jamaat Islamiyya, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, they're all part of the same tree, which is this sense of Islamist supremacy, the Sharia state, and even domestically, groups that are non-violent, but part of the Muslim Brotherhood legacy groups, etc., are not our allies. They don't share our ideology of freedom and Muslim reform against the Sharia state. So therefore, we have to start to understand that the conveyor belt towards these groups, so that we can abandon this whack-a-mole program, is this ideology of freedom, and our Muslim reform movement is willing and ready to start to advise them on how to do that.
You know, while I've got you, and I just want to get your take as well on this sort of change, or at least slight pivot on the part of the president toward torture. Now he views it that he would defer to his defense secretary, and James Mattis has already indicated that he's not in favor of it, that no torture, and that he would defer to that view, something that John McCain and others have urged as well. What do you make of that in our fight against ISIS and terrorists, whether that's a good or a bad thing?
Well, I think sort of the good cop, bad cop discussion between President Trump and the generals is very effective. On the one hand, we say that America is not going to be weak. We're not going to let our enemies determine what we do to keep our country safe. But on the other hand, to be that beacon of freedom and liberty and morality, we cannot do things that would be what our enemies would do. We have to maintain the Geneva Convention, maintain that era of enlightenment and freedom, so that the Muslims see us, especially American Muslims, as setting the standard globally rather than going down to their level. So I'm one who believes that we should not do things that are ineffective, but also not surrender and do things that wouldn't keep us safe.
All right. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, great seeing you again. Thank you for taking the time.
Anytime. Thanks.